Hello everyone, my name is Tiggs Rice and I'm excited to be back for the second live Adobe online photography event. For those who joined us back in March, welcome back, and for those of you who are joining us for the first time, you are in for a treat. We have an eventful night ahead of us as we'll be speaking to 4 incredibly talented photographers, and they'll be sharing their stories, giving you their very best tips and tricks, including some live demonstration in Adobe Photoshop and Lightroom. So here's what we have in store throughout the next 2 hours. First, we'll be joined by freelance photographer Alisa Horn, followed by photographer and blogger Carolyn Strich, aka The Slow Traveller. Then freelance photographer Julia Smith, aka Humphrey and Grace, will join us. And last, but by no means least, photographer and videographer Ryan Howard will be here. As a photographer myself, I can't wait to see the tips and tricks that these guys are going to be sharing with us tonight. We'll be live tweeting throughout the evening from @AdobeUK, so please do join in the conversation using the hashtag #MakeIt. We'd love to hear your thoughts on tonight's jam-packed event. Listen out throughout the show, as I'll also be letting you know how you can get your hands on a free 12-month membership to Adobe's Creative Cloud Photography Plan, so you can start putting your newfound skills to the test. Right, so I hope you're ready, as it's time to welcome our first speaker, Alisa Horn. Welcome, Alisa.
Hi, how are you?
Yeah, I'm really good. How are you?
Thank you.
It's really exciting to have you here with us today. How was your travel down?
Yeah, it was fine.
Because you've come all the way from Glasgow, haven't you?
All the way from Glasgow, yeah, just today. It was fine, it was good.
Good. Yeah, well, we're really lucky to have you with us here today. For those of our viewers that haven't seen your work before, tell us a bit about yourself. How did you get started in your photography?
So I got my first camera when I was 11 years old. My mum loves taking pictures and she kind of wanted me to get into it. So I got my first kind of little Panasonic, little kind of holiday picture camera. So I just took pictures when I was on holiday, and I was the annoying kid at school who would take pictures at parties and post them on Facebook and tag everyone. So that was me. And then I kind of did that up until university, where I studied marketing, kind of just taking pictures on holidays again, nothing too serious. And then I went on the west coast of America for a month, traveling from LA up through Yosemite, San Francisco, Pacific Northwest, back down through Yellowstone.
Wow, that's a
Grand Canyon, Zion
trip. Yeah,
it was 1 month. I think we did 5,000 miles.
Wow.
Yeah, and after that, I kind of fell in love with landscapes. There's so much diversity out there on the west coast.
Yeah.
And then I kind of came back to Scotland and realised I had hardly taken any pictures.
Yeah.
So I kind of started my passion to try and capture our own little country.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you live in such a great area to be exploring as well.
Yeah.
A lot of photographers these days, making trips from all over the world to come and visit like your home local area. So
I don't think we really appreciate it until we kind of go other places, and then we come back and like, oh, there's so much to see in Scotland. So yeah, we're really lucky.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you remember how many photos you took on that month trip?
Thousands. Yeah, it was a lot, and a lot of rubbish as well.
Yeah. How long did the editing take on that one?
I didn't actually edit there. I just kind of taking pictures, just kind of putting them on Facebook. Nothing like the Instagram filters, so nothing serious. So compared to what I do nowadays, it was not a lot.
So how did you transition between the two then? At what point did you go, do you know what, actually I'm going to start taking these photos, I'm going to start popping them through editing software?
Yeah, after I kind of came back from America, I kind of took more seriously pictures in Scotland and kind of met with photographers here. And then maybe about a year or so, just kind of taking pictures every week, going out, taking pictures. And then I got a random commission to go to San Francisco with Airbnb. And I was kind of like, oh, maybe I can do something out of this. Got really out of the blue, just woke up one morning. And then I kind of thought, right, I need to kind of click onto this editing. Yeah. Kind of take it more seriously. So kind of rolled on from then.
And did you jump straight into Lightroom, or like how did your editing process?
I got a recommendation from a friend from Instagram who told me, because I knew people who edited via Lightroom, but I had no idea what to do. So I messaged him and he told me kind of a few kind of key pointers to do. And so it kind of happened from them. So I guess it's all his. He can take credit for that, I guess. Yeah. Yeah.
So what do you love about photography? What draws you to photography?
I'd say I'm really passionate about traveling. I love traveling. We were fortunate as kids to be traveling with our parents around Scotland, abroad. So definitely I love traveling, and taking photography, taking pictures while you're abroad is kind of a great combination.
Yeah.
I also think kind of the most important for myself is kind of memories. So every time you go somewhere, there's like a beautiful sunset or camping around the fire with friends, kind of going back to that moment. It's kind of the closest thing to reliving that moment.
Yeah.
I think that's kind of the one. I always look back at pictures from my America trip and I'm like, oh, it just brings back good memories. So I love that about photography for sure.
Amazing.
I also really like kind of meeting friends through Instagram especially.
Yeah.
I've met so many good friends from it as a result of photography. So I really love kind of meeting new people and finding out their story and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, it's definitely, as we were talking off camera a little while ago as well, and saying it's such a great way to network and meet new people.
Absolutely.
And yeah, just the opportunities that come from it are fantastic, aren't they?
Yeah, it's mind-blowing to be honest.
So for those who haven't seen your Instagram, there is a pretty clear theme to your curated Instagram feed, isn't there?
Yeah.
You want to talk us through a little bit about what you have on there? And
Sure. Probably as a result of America and Scotland, I kind of focused on landscapes.
Yeah.
Predominantly mountains and the coastline, and thankfully in Scotland we have a mixture of both.
Yeah.
And I also kind of take the occasional, I wouldn't say I'm a wildlife photographer for sure, but I love taking pictures of animals if I can, mostly highland cows and deer. And then I just got back from Canada 2 weeks ago. I was taking pictures of grizzly bears and black bears, which was incredible. So
tell us about grizzly bears. That sounds so exciting.
They're pretty terrifying. We were lucky one morning. We got up for sunrise. I'm just taking. It was a beautiful sunrise, and then all of a sudden we saw this grizzly bear in the car park, and there were people 10, 15 feet away. So it was pretty scary because they can obviously attack you if you ruffle the feathers. And she was still there about 20, 30 minutes later. So we went down, and we were about 30 feet away, just watching her, just having a little scratch, and it was amazing. Yeah,
I can't believe you were 30 feet away from a grizzly bear.
It was quite scary. There was a park ranger, so it wasn't too bad. But
yeah,
it was
still.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, when you think back about it, it was a bit too close.
And what were you using to photograph? Obviously, 30 feet still. I mean, it's still pretty close.
Yeah.
What
I had a 70 to 300. I probably could have done with a little closer. And I didn't have my tripod, so that was a bit like
handheld.
Sketchy. Yeah, it was okay. I mean, there was people beside me all with tripods looking professional, and I was just trying and keep as steady as possible, but it was okay.
Yeah. So what are you shooting with now? What's your main camera?
I shoot with a Nikon D750. It's my main camera. Yeah.
And do you have a favourite lens?
Probably my 50mm.
Yeah.
Which I don't take for landscapes predominantly, but for if I'm close to wildlife or portraits, which I quite like to challenge myself with sometimes.
And what about your landscapes then? What's your go-to?
Usually my 24 to 70.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a nice lens, that one.
Yeah.
Yep. So how would you summarise your signature style then?
I always struggle to kind of say what my signature style is. People tell me I have one, but I struggle. I think I love colour and I love contrast.
Yeah. And there is a definite theme of colour and contrast going through. I mean, your feed is stunning. They're colours that definitely speak to me. And is much of that, does the landscape and your subject matter influence that, do you think?
Absolutely. I think the colours of Scotland, especially during autumn, I love kind of orangey green tones. So that kind of anywhere you go, maybe to Perth, I would recommend if you're going up north to the Cairngorms. It's beautiful in the autumn.
Yeah.
But especially going to different countries, the colours definitely change. Considering what a colour of the landscape is. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it changes.
Because on your recent trip, obviously the landscape would have been very different. So did you find when you were editing, were you drawn back towards the colours of your sort of natural homeland?
I tried not to. I felt like I can try to be as natural as possible because it was really green in Canada, and obviously there's a lot of glaciers and glacial water, so kind of green and turquoisey blue. So I'll go down that route. That's fine with me. Yeah.
Sounds good to me too. So do you have any advice to share with anyone that's just starting out in their photography career?
I would definitely say meet up with fellow photographers if you're on Instagram, or if you go to a local photography club. Definitely meet up with other people. You'll learn a lot from them, and they'll probably learn a lot from you, just in the way you take pictures, how you edit, all that kind of stuff. I think that's a really good way of sharing your experience. If you go for a sunset with someone, it's a lot nicer if you do it with someone rather than yourself.
Yeah,
absolutely.
And is that something you do quite a bit? Do you go out and
I've got quite a good group of friends in Glasgow who we try and go camping every once in a while.
Oh, that sounds like fun.
Yeah, we were camping last weekend up in the northwest.
Oh, nice.
But the midges were really, really bad.
Yeah.
Yeah, terrible.
And how often do you guys meet up? And is this something that obviously you guys have your friendship group, but is this something that people can find easily? Like where do you find other people to go and do these trips with?
It's mainly people I've just kind of contacted via Instagram. Like the first people I met from Instagram, I just randomly reached out to them. I hardly any followers. They were 40, 50,000, and thankfully they said yes, and we met up for food and then sorted a trip out. So honestly just contact anyone.
Yeah.
People are really, really friendly on Instagram. It's a really nice community.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, some brilliant people on there, aren't there?
Yeah.
So talk to me a little bit about Lightroom then. How do you use Lightroom to edit your photos?
So I use Lightroom for every single picture. I've used it since summer of 15. I think I said to you before it's 2 years this month.
Oh, happy anniversary.
Yep.
Yeah.
Thank you. But it's really, really useful for my work. I think to be able to create your own style, it's kind of nearly impossible not to use another software. So it's my go-to software. It's really, really useful. And
it definitely speeds up editing, doesn't it? So be able to sort of batch edit.
Absolutely, yeah. If you have your own, if you're able to create your own presets and then just as one button, it's really, really useful.
Yeah. So I'm guessing it's one of those things that you can't really live without, hey?
No, I can't. No.
So we would love to see some of your editing. I would love to see how you get these incredible tones out of your images. So go for it.
Yeah, perfect. Okay. So to start with, I'm going to edit a picture I took in the Faroe Islands just last month on a commission.
Yep.
So this is Gjóf in the Faroe Islands, which means gorge, as you can see.
Yep.
So I'm going to start with that one. So I use Visco presets.
Yeah.
So they've got preset packs, and then from there I'll kind of edit after that. So the one that I really, really like just now is preset pack 6.
Okay.
So I think they've got 5 or 6 different ones, and that's the one I kind of go to just now.
Yeah.
And I shoot in Nikon, so I've got the cross push and pull Visco Film 6 is the one I kind of go to just now.
So the Viscos, for those people that haven't used them, especially you get a pack like 6, for example, and they come with a Canon version and a Nikon version and various different ones. So you're using the one specifically for your camera.
For Nikon,
yeah.
And in this certain pack, my kind of go-to one just now is quite a little bit further down. It's called Portra 160++.
Yeah, I like the Portras.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's the one I kind of go to just now. So that's the kind of first thing I'll go to. So I'll just press that, and as you can tell, a little bit of a filmy grain, but it's a lot darker.
Yeah. And is that your starting point for most images?
I would say 85–90% of my photos, I'll kind of start with this, and then sometimes you do start editing a picture and it's not quite the right way, so maybe you'll have to go and try and find another one, but that's kind of my go-to one.
Perfect.
So to start with, I kind of have 2 main things I'll do to start with. So I scroll all the way down to lens corrections.
Yep.
And remove chromatic aberration and profile corrections. So Lightroom is really, really useful. It kind of takes away any of the
lens imperfections.
Imperfections, yeah. So this one's specific to my model and my lens that I shot. It was a 24-70.
Yep.
So that's the first thing I go to. So as you can tell, the picture slightly comes... Oh, wrong one. It comes slightly a bit closer to... The picture kind of comes a bit closer to you, and it's a little bit brighter. So that's...
It's getting rid of that vignetting around the edge.
Absolutely.
It's natural from the lens.
Yep. And then after that, I'll go up to the top to crop overlay and get rid of my wonky composition that happens pretty much every time. So every time I take a picture, I'm slightly further up on the right-hand side. Yeah. It's pretty much the same for every single photo.
Yep.
So I have to straighten the angle by about -1.5 to 2.
Yeah.
Kind of every picture. So we'll just
I love that it's the same for like all of them.
It's really strange because I can literally, if I have 20 pictures, I can just batch them -1.5 and it will be pretty much straight the whole time, which is kind of strange.
Mine depends on literally how tired I am. So the more tired I am, the more wonky it gets.
Yeah, it's really annoying because you think you've got it perfect and then you go back and you're like, oh.
Yeah.
Yeah, anyway, that's where I start with that one. And then I'm going to mess around with the temperature just a little bit. I'm just going to increase the exposure just so I can see it because I've underexposed the picture.
Yeah.
A bit of a good tip for people who are maybe starting, if you're not sure either to overexpose or underexpose a picture. If you underexpose it, you'll have a lot less detail on the picture if you're shooting in RAW.
Right.
So that's...
And RAW's what you're shooting in normally anyway.
Yeah. That's really good if you're shooting in Lightroom. Gives you a lot of a detail in the picture.
So much more control.
Yeah. So from here, I'm gonna increase the exposure. I'm going to overexpose it. It's going to look terrible just now, but just bear with me.
Just so you can see what you're doing.
Yeah. Just so I can see what I was doing, because my eyesight's not great. So I'm just going to bring down the temperature a little bit. It's a little bit too orange for me, so I'm just going to bring the temperature down to 5400. Make it a little bit more blue. I can just remember when I was there, it was really, really moody. There's a lot of clouds, so I remember it kind of being a little bit blue. So
when you're editing, are you trying to get your image to look as much like you remember it being at the time?
Sometimes you take a picture and the place is beautiful, but maybe the conditions are not great.
Yeah.
But I think yes, sort of.
Yeah.
And then I'll just bring down the exposure just back to where it was, maybe a little bit higher, just so I can, because it was a little bit underexposed. As we were saying earlier, I kind of love contrast, so I'll pipe up the contrast to 25 or 30 just to kind of give it a little bit of, make it stand out a little bit more, make the blacks kind of more distinct. Next off, I will go to highlights and whites. Kind of the top third of the picture is quite bright, it's quite white. So just kind of making that even a little bit more, just making that down to about 0. I think after pressing the portrait, that brings that down, because that's how it's edited. But I like to put them back up, so that's a little bit brighter, easier to see. And I will increase the shadows if I press the right button, just a little bit, just so we can see the gorge a little bit better. It's a little bit dark down there.
Yep.
And the blacks are okay. So I'll just continue down. I've got a pretty straightforward editing. I don't think it's too, just kind of down the line, just easy peasy. And also I love saturation, so we'll hike that up a little bit as well, just to bring out the greens in the picture. And I think the basic section is done. And we'll just go down to probably 2 of my most important bits, the hues, HSL, and the split toning. Yeah.
So this is where the bulk of your different edits,
I would say that's maybe where my colours come from.
Yeah.
For sure. And I'll just start with luminance. So you can get some kind of really strange results if you go into luminance and play around with them. But for me, I'm just going to put them all back to 0, because it's easiest. I think it's easiest for me, just put them back to 0. And everything kind of doesn't look out of focus. And then onto hues. For me, the main colours in this picture are the yellows and the greens. So the rest of the picture, I'm just going to put back down, because for me, maybe I'll look into the oranges as well, but the rest of the colours is if there's a bit of blue in the bottom, but I'll put them back to 0 and the rest, because that's fine with me. There's no need to change any of them.
Yep.
And the orange section is mainly the bottom right of the picture. As you can probably see, if I'm going, it's going quite orange.
Yeah, just in that little corner.
So I'm just going to make it, I'm going to change the yellows a little bit as well. So I'm going to make it, actually probably just 0 as well. Just the kind of colours that I quite like.
Yep.
The yellow, I'm going to bring out the yellow. You can't quite see them just now, but you'll see them in a minute if I move that down. You can see there's quite a few patches in the gorge and also in the field, but I'm not going to do as much as that, because that's a bit overkill. So we'll put that down to about -20, and then bring the greens up just a little bit to kind of come in par with the yellows. And then saturation-wise, I want to increase the yellows a little bit. They're a little bit flat for me.
Yeah.
I like colours, so they're a little bit.
Bring them out.
Yeah. So put up to about 15, 20. I think 20 is good. And the greens, maybe just a little bit closer, so -15. I think colour-wise, I'm quite happy with that.
Perfect.
And then down to split toning. So the main one I focus on here is the highlights. The shadows, you can play around with them if you have Lightroom, but for me it looks a bit strange. I'll show an example, but it looks a bit like, it goes a bit over, depending on which colour you do, but it looks a bit overkill. So I usually leave the shadows and focus on the highlights.
Perfect.
And this, you can kind of completely change the tone of the picture depending on what kind of style, if you want to go bluey or orangey, whatever. So I'm going to actually stay where it was. I actually quite liked it where it was.
Do you normally tend to lean towards the warmer or the cooler tones when you're doing your split toning?
Recently, I've been going towards the more cooler tones. I've been kind of doing the warmer tones for probably a year or two. You can really, if you scroll through my feed, you can see it's quite orange.
Yeah.
I kind of maybe overdid it maybe a few times. So for just now, I'm going for kind of the more kind of blue, kind of subtle.
Yeah.
Which I think is okay here because you've got a lot of colour in the kind of top
Suits it, doesn't it?
Yeah, and then I think that's okay there. So that is fine with me. And then I've got a few things just to double check. Personally, myself, I'm not a grain fan. I know a lot of people are.
I'm not a grain fan.
No? Okay.
No.
So I can see this has got a little bit of grain. You might not be able to tell much difference from this.
If you just zoom in on it,
yeah, just zoom in. Yeah. I'll put it back to 18. You might be able to tell a little difference. It's maybe a little hint, but
kind of just see it there.
Just a slightly one. But if you add that up here, you'll be able to see it gets really kind of well noisy. So I'm not a fan of grain, but I know a lot of people who are.
And especially if you've got quite a lot of detail in there that's quite small on that sort of horizon, then the grain can probably break that up quite a bit, can't it?
Absolutely. So just double check, because I don't know how many times I've edited a picture, haven't checked the grain, and then you try and post it and you're like, oh, it's the quality's so always double check. And then the last one for me is sharpening. So I think my friend George actually told me to do it between like 60 and 70. Usually that's kind of like the kind of max that it goes to. So just a little bit, just to make it a little bit poppier. Poppier, is that a word?
We'll go with it. It's fine. It's done.
Yeah. And then last but not least, I'm going to use the spot removal tool, which can be really useful in certain situations. And for me, there's this little bit, the birds have obviously been active in the area. Right. So I'm just going to get rid of this. Just a little drawing just to get rid of it. And just double check it looks okay. Yeah, it looks fine. Just to get rid of the white because it kind of breaks away. And that's, I think, my final edit.
Perfect.
And then that is the before and the after.
Amazing. So then talk us through the process of what happens after you've edited the photo. Does anything happen between export and going online?
Sometimes, I'll usually export via Dropbox. So just kind of uploading it and then using it on my phone. Sometimes the colours are slightly different on my phone to laptop, but there's hardly any difference. Maybe a little tweak on Snapseed or Visco. Yeah. But hardly anything. It's usually
pretty much what comes out of Lightroom is.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
Yeah. Yep. And when you're working through, would you then batch edit and then apply these to everything, or do you have to go in and fine tune pretty much every?
I think for pictures in this specific location, I can usually just copy and paste. But it does depend on the picture, and also you can over and underexpose pictures, so it does kind of. You can then obviously paste it on certain pictures, but then you have to kind of fine tweak. But it's quite a good starter for then using on other pictures.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the hue and saturation, that's quite a big panel for you then, isn't it? Quite a lot of your work is done through there. Yeah,
I would say the majority of like my colours, obviously I said last time, the majority of my colours come through that. It's definitely very, very useful. Obviously there's certain ones I didn't use, but I use that pretty much for every single picture for sure, yeah.
And you mentioned your work before was you were using the split toning, making it warmer, but now you're going more towards the blue. Do you think that's a natural shift in your work, and sort of the inspiration is leading you more into the cooler?
Yeah, I think so. I think also my recent trip to Canada, there was a lot of greens and blues, and I feel like the orange doesn't really suit it as much unless you're there in autumn and the colours have changed. But
yeah, did your preset change for that as well? Yeah,
I had to kind of rejig. A few of them. Yeah, I have about 5 or 10 that I use, and then I had to kind of rejig depending on the picture. So yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Oh, well, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and wisdom with us. It's been such a pleasure looking through your work. What's next for you? What will we see you doing next?
I have a few projects lined up. I was quite busy the last month or two, but I'm going to Greenland in August.
Oh, that's going to be exciting, isn't it?
For a week, so that'll be really interesting. A place I don't know too much about. I know it's full of ice.
Yeah.
But I'm looking forward to seeing that. We're doing a bit of kayaking and all sorts. So
amazing.
It'll be fun.
And what will you be photographing?
Mostly landscapes there. Yeah, it'll be. I think I'm in the southwest with a few other people. I'm not really too sure. It's kind of pretty vague just now. So we'll see.
Lips sealed for now, but I'm sure it'll be great to see what you get up to. And finally, just one other question for you: what's your bucket list? Like, what is What would you absolutely love to do if someone came to you today and said, you know, I've got an absolute dream job, what would it be?
That's a very, very good question. A few years ago, I probably would have said I'd love to have been a sport photographer.
Yeah?
I love football. I would love to be in like pitch side watching football.
Football as in English football or like American football?
Yeah, English football, yeah. And also I'm even a wildlife photographer, but I don't have the patience for it.
No,
I know people who do, but I don't have the patience for it. But
it's too many early mornings and sitting around in quiet spaces.
Yeah. I just love to continue, maybe go to a few new places that I haven't been to. I've never been to South America or Asia or Oceania.
Yeah.
So I just love to see as much as possible.
So there's still quite a lot out there for you to explore.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Brilliant. Well, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and spending time with us today. It's absolutely been a pleasure to meet you. Your work is fantastic, and I can't wait to catch up with you on Instagram and see more of your work.
Thanks very much.
It's all right. So some great editing tips there, and I hope everyone at home is getting ready to put them into practice. For those of you tuned in, let us know what your favourite tricks and tips are over on Twitter using the hashtag @AdobeUK and the hashtag #MakeIt. And I think it's now time to let you know how you can get your hands on your own 12-month Creative Cloud photography plan. We simply want to share your best shot edited using the tips you've learnt tonight. You can do this with us via Twitter, tag us @AdobeUK, and make sure you include the hashtag #MakeIt. We'll be selecting our favourites by Tuesday, 18th of July. You've got plenty of time, so don't rush off quite yet, and we have loads more to come for you. So I'm now pleased to welcome photographer and Instagram extraordinaire Carolyn, aka The Slow Traveller. Hi, Carolyn.
Hello.
Hi, how are you?
I'm very well, thank you. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good. You've travelled quite a little bit today as well, haven't you? Where have you come from?
Newcastle.
Yeah.
Not too long, though. It's only about 3 hours on the train, so it's not, and a light train, so it's not too bad.
Well, thank you so much for being here with us
Thank you for having
me. So I must start by asking you about your photos. I was having a look on your Instagram earlier, and one of the things I love about your Instagram feed is we never see your face. And I just wondered if that was a conscious decision from the very beginning, or whether it's something that's just developed through your work?
No, I'd like to say there was a kind of a big idea behind it, but really it was just because when I was traveling, I was solely posting travel pictures, but when I came home, I kind of felt that it would be nice for people to sort of see who was behind the pictures, but I'm quite awkward with the camera. I don't really like having my picture taken, so it was a kind of a way of me being in the pictures without the awkwardness, I suppose.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, I completely get that as well. Sometimes I find it really hard. I'm like, oh, I'd have to be in the photo today.
But now everybody sees my face, so.
I know, the mystery is revealed. Well, you're beautiful, so honestly, if you want to put your face in, we will be fine with that.
Okay.
So have you always been a photographer?
No, so I became a professional photographer. I think it was around about 2014. So I worked in offices before, 9-to-5 jobs, and I always had an interest in photography, but that was it, an interest and a kind of a hobby. And I took an evening course in just basic digital photography, just because I wanted to learn how to use a DSLR.
Yeah.
And quit my job and went travelling, and it was the travelling that kind of inspired the idea that photography could actually be something more than just an interest and a hobby, and it was something I really wanted to pursue as a career. So
where did you travel?
Well, I travelled with my boyfriend for 2 years. The first year was India and Southeast Asia.
Amazing.
The second year was Latin America. So
wow.
Yeah.
So you've seen quite a bit then.
Sunderland. Yeah. Bit of a change.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So has that had a massive influence, like having seen quite a bit of the world as well? Do you think that has an influence on what you shoot?
Yeah, I think that was the only photography I knew at the time, and that's where, you know, the first published work I had was through travel. Instagram kind of took off through travel, so so definitely, yeah.
So talk us a little bit through your style, for those people out there who maybe haven't seen your work before. How would you define your work?
I don't think I have a particular style. I mean, aesthetically, all of my pictures are very bright and pastel-y. But I think for me, it's more about what the photographs represent, and it's the stuff that I love. And it's usually ordinary stuff. So when I'm traveling, I tend to find neighborhoods and the quiet streets rather than the big monuments and the big tourist attractions. So I suppose it's kind of me trying to find the beauty in ordinary stuff and share that with people.
Amazing. And do you go on trips, like specifically planned ones, or do you find that you can just go out and literally just find things in the middle of nowhere and find inspiration from them?
Yeah, so I mean, I want to go everywhere, so I will go anywhere. And yeah, there's always, I usually what I'll do is if we're going somewhere, I'll look up, neighborhoods rather than attractions. So I'll look up, where there's maybe some cool coffee shops and, independent shops and stuff like that, because that's where I tend to find the type of facades and buildings and things that I shoot for Instagram. So yeah.
Amazing. And you've travelled to some fantastic places like we've already discussed. Where would you say is the best, where's your favourite place you've ever shot?
God, well, I think probably places like India and Bolivia and some of the busier places are the places I've loved to take photographs, only because it's so different from what I'm used to seeing.
Yeah.
They're not the photographs that I share on Instagram, just because it doesn't really, those images don't really work with my aesthetic. But in terms of like nostalgia and that kind of thing, I think I'm maybe, when I go back and look at pictures, I tend to kind of look at the pictures of the kind of more lively, busy places that I've been.
So you say that there are things that you photographed, and obviously you look back on those ones. Your feed is very, very well curated. Is that something that you put a lot of conscious effort into? How do you choose what goes into your feed and what you maybe choose to leave out?
I think now definitely. Before, it was a bit of a mishmash. While I was traveling, I would just kind of post whatever that day. Now that I'm home, and now it's, I kind of do take the curation and the style more into consideration.
Yeah.
I shoot, I post travel pictures, but also pictures at home as well. And I think probably I keep in mind the aesthetic before I shoot now, maybe more. So it kind of, it's all in tune.
Yeah. And do you think that leads where your work is going? Do you find that has quite a big influence on what you shoot, or are you still happy to shoot absolutely everything and keep a lot of work back for your personal?
Yeah, so I take a lot of pictures, and a lot of those pictures don't see the light of day.
Yeah.
And I do some work for outside of Instagram for publications and stuff. So that's quite a bit different from the work that I put on Instagram. But yeah, so I'm still inspired by lots of things that aren't light and bright and that kind of thing. But that's what works. Yeah, we all do.
So how important is your online presence to your brand as a whole? Obviously, you say you shoot the stuff that's on there and other things as well. Has it been a huge impact for you?
Well, I think The Slow Traveller is a brand because mainly my online presence, well, pretty much at the minute, solely Instagram. And because Instagram's a visual platform, then it's imperative, the photography to my online presence, because that is my online presence. And so it's really, really important.
And where did the name Slow Traveller come from?
Well, it was because when me and my boyfriend travel, we get a bit lazy and we tend to overstay our welcome in the majority of places we go. A few days will turn into a week, and a week will turn into a month. So it kind of came from that. A lot of people kind of allude to the fact that it's a bit more poetic, and it's kind of like, because you like to take things slowly, and I'm like, no, it's just because we're lazy. So that's where it came from.
Take the time to soak it all in. Yeah. How does editing play a part in your photography?
Now, especially now that my Instagram has become part of my business, and what I do as a career, it's hugely important, because I've developed a style which is hopefully recognisable to me in a certain aesthetic. So without the editing, I wouldn't be able to maintain that kind of style and that look properly.
And did you pick up editing? Were you straight into Lightroom, or what was your journey between taking photos and then going, you know what, actually, I want to edit these and I want to work towards this aesthetic? Where was that journey for you?
Well, because I took the evening course, the bloke that ran it had told me straight away to shoot in RAW.
Great.
I didn't really get it or anything. I just was doing what I was told.
Yeah.
So my editing, I was straight into camera raw, which is very similar in terms of the panels and what you use to Lightroom.
Yeah.
So I don't really use Photoshop a great deal because I don't really do anything outside of kind of basic editing.
Yeah.
So Camera Raw and now Lightroom works perfectly for the stuff that I do with my pictures.
Yeah, and Lightroom obviously will let you do bulk and batch editing, whereas Camera Raw, to some extent, was one by one.
I'm slowly moving and understanding that Lightroom is the way forward, but I'm kind of stuck a little bit kind of in the past. I'm a bit old-fashioned, so I still use Camera Raw from time to time.
What works for you works for you.
And
the thing is, a lot of the tools in there, like you say, they're the same. They're just in different places.
Exactly.
So and the work that you're creating is fantastic. So
thank you very much.
It's definitely working for you. What are your favourite tools? What stands out for you? What's something you rely on?
Well, because you've probably seen from my Instagram, I shoot in quite harsh light situations, whether it's at home facing a window where there's light coming through or in sunny places. So the stuff that I rely on that's useful for me for that kind of image is I use the colour panel quite a lot, and I use the luminance just to bring detail back into kind of overexposed images. And I also use exposure and highlights in opposition with each other so that I can kind of get that bright light feel without washing out the detail, so to speak.
And do you find that you naturally underexpose or overexpose?
Yeah, I think because of the fact that my images are bright, it's better for me to underexpose so that I have more room to work with the image when I'm, post-processing.
Yeah, a bit more detail up in that higher
exactly.
range. So are there any tricks and tips you could give people for photographing similar stuff to you? So especially with the backlighting, which some people can struggle with, what key things could you advise?
Well, I think what we've just discussed, maybe it's best to kind of underexpose the image if you're shooting kind of facing light or in harsh light conditions, but not to be frightened of doing it, because I think a lot of people are a bit worried about shooting in those kind of conditions, but there's always stuff that you can do to fix it. So I'd say, shoot in a sunny place and we can fix it.
Yeah, and I always find you can get some really great sort of like lighting effects, especially with backlighting as well. Just get that glow that you just can't get with any other
exactly.
style of lighting. So I would love to see what you have for us in Lightroom. So I will pass it over to you and you can show us what you've got.
So I'm going to edit this picture of Barcelona, which has been a popular one for me on Instagram. And I'm going to start, because Instagram, we know, is the square. I kind of always have to keep that in mind, so I kind of shoot in portrait a lot of the time. But I'm going to crop it, first of all, to a square, so I'm not distracted by any of the other details.
So do you stick to the square? I mean, obviously, Instagram, it shows up on the square on your feed, but now allows you to shoot landscape and to some extent portrait. Do you just stick to the square anyway? I
don't actually. When it comes to, unless it's a straight-on image, if it's a kind of a street shot looking down, or some of my images at home with the big windows, I actually use a 4:5 ratio. And that's because I think with the square, you lose the perspective, the scale, sorry. So you kind of lose that sort of height and stuff. Yeah. So obviously people outside of my following will only see the details in the square, but I still like to present it with that kind of portrait ratio so that you can kind of get the scale properly. Okay, so I'm quite happy with that as a crop. And I'm quite meticulous when it comes to the perspective. This one's not too bad, but some of them, you know, take quite a lot of fixing. But I can still notice a couple of things that I'm not quite happy with. So I'll fix that second. And I'm just going to only slightly. And because I've done that, rotate it slightly as well. So not much, just...
Where was this taken?
This one's in Barcelona.
Nice. The architecture is incredible, isn't it?
I know, I'd never seen anything like it. And it was tough because this particular building, next door to it's one of Barcelona's most popular buildings, and it's a Gaudi building.
Oh, which one? The one that's on the big...
Batlo, I don't know how
the museum?
It properly. It's a house, but it's a museum now.
Yes.
So that's next door to this one, but I actually ended up being a bit more impressed by this one. But there was hundreds of people standing below the building, so I had to...
It's impossible to get past it, isn't it?
Yeah, so I went across to the other side of the road so I could get kind of... I knew I was going to crop in and not use...
Yeah.
You've probably noticed I don't like... There's not many people in my pictures, which means a lot of waiting around. I'm going to turn the temperature up because I think on this one it's a bit too cool. Mm-hmm. So just slightly. And I'm going to take the green tint out because actually some of the colours, we have a bit of magenta and kind of warmer colours. So I'm going to take that out as well. Now, this one definitely isn't bright enough for my Instagram feed. So I'm going to bump the exposure up by about +70 or something like that.
Mm-hmm. So that's making a massive difference.
Yeah, it does, definitely. And I think with this one, because it's, you know, it's a sort of a 2D image, I'm happy just to just use medium contrast.
Yep.
But because that's now increased the blacks, and I don't like to have much black in my feed, I'm going to take some of the black and the shadows out.
Yeah.
And then also I'll bump up the whites just to make
really
that colour pop a bit more. Yeah.
And suddenly those colours in the windows are really starting to show, aren't they?
Yeah, and I love the fact that you can see the inside light as well.
Yeah.
I think that really... but what's happened because I've, you know, bumped the exposure and the whites up is we're starting to lose a little bit of the detail in the oranges here.
Yeah.
So this is where the colour panel comes in and where I use luminance. So I'm just going to bring the detail in the orange back in.
Yep.
Just a little bit, not too much, maybe to about there. And then bump the whites up, which in this image are yellow. And also, because I like the blue in the windows, I'm going to just bump the saturation up on those a little bit.
Yeah,
now, there's a lot of detail in the architecture on this one. So I'm actually going to sharpen this one quite a bit. Mm-hmm. So with this one, I'd probably go to 100, but because obviously that's created more noise than I'd like, I'll just put a bit of luminance on there as well.
Just to soften that up a little bit.
Yeah, exactly. I think maybe I'd take that up a little bit more. No, that's a bit much. And I'd be quite happy to I think, post that on Instagram. I think that would probably work.
Amazing. So is this do all your photos go through a very similar process, or is it literally, do you take each image one by one?
I do take each image one by one, but my editing is quite basic. Because of the kind of imagery I'm working with, there's not always a great deal I need to do. But in terms of the stuff that I use in Photoshop, they're all, you know, I'm always going to bump the exposure up, and I'm always going to, you know, bump the whites up and that sort of thing, because that way I maintain the, you know, the aesthetic that I have across my Instagram feed. So it is the same, but I don't use presets or anything like that. I like to kind of deal with each image.
Yeah. And get it perfect.
Yeah.
So when you were, I mean, let's take this for example, how long would you spend getting it right? Obviously, you're saying you're waiting for people not to be in the shot, and especially on that road in Barcelona, I know how much of a struggle that must have been. Like, how long do you spend making sure you get the image?
Well, I took about 200 pictures of this one, and I was there, and then it just wasn't happening. So we left the area and came back again.
Yeah.
And I was like, Gary, we need to go back. We only had a few days there, and half of a day was spent just trying to get a picture of this one building. But yeah, or I'd happily spend 20 minutes standing in exactly the same spot, waiting for a car to disappear or people to not be there.
Yeah.
I don't know why. I think it's just something.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm exactly the same. I went to a museum. My partner's actually just started photography as well. And we're going around looking at the back of my camera and go, nope, we have to go back. I need to take that photo again. So I'm completely with you. What do you take? What's your kit when you travel with? Do you travel light? Do you...
Very, yeah.
Yeah?
So I don't really, even with the architecture, I don't take a tripod or anything like that. And I think it was because I knew that we were going to be traveling for quite some time, so I had to go with the light option, and now I'm kind of used to it. And I feel when there's too much, when I have other bits of kit, it takes some of the kind of natural feel out of it for me when I'm photographing.
Yeah.
So I kind of like to have the camera in my hand, and I like to have the frame. Yeah. Look through the camera and see the frame and things like that, which you lose a little bit when using a tripod, for me anyway.
Yeah.
So yeah, I do tend to, some of the shots at home we use a tripod, just because the windows are a bit it's an old house, so it's not actually straight.
Yeah.
So we have to use it sometimes, but yeah.
And so, especially the ones with you in, do you set them up and have a timer, or how do you do those ones?
Yeah, so I would use a tripod and do a timer, or if Gary's around, I kind of set everything up for him and ask him to click the button.
Yeah, good old Instagram boyfriend.
Yeah, we all have them. Sometimes it helps because I think they're more natural than the ones when I'm just sort of floating around, pressing a button, then kind of running into the shot. You kind of lose some of the, that natural sort of feel. So it helps to have the Instagram husband. Yeah.
And what about the ones? So obviously, you spend 20 minutes on the ones when you're, like this one, for example. What about the ones with you? Do you find that you approach them very differently? Because you say, you don't necessarily always feel the most comfortable in front of the camera. Are those try and get it done as quickly as possible, or are those a similar process? Are they, 20 minutes and get the right one?
Well, at home, it actually takes a bit longer because I kind of like to dress the scene. Mm-hmm. So
we were talking about this earlier because you've got some incredible stuff in your house to photograph
books
with.
And the plants and stuff. Yeah. My new obsessions.
Have those books always lived there, or are they?
Well, yeah. Gary's the book person, my boyfriend Gary. So it's his collection really. He reads a lot of books. But when we first moved into the house, because we had so many, it was just a place to put them. Mm-hmm. Then I thought, actually, that looks like that. I think I could make a nice picture out of that, and it kind of just went a bit mad. So it's become a bit of a series for me. So
they're staying.
They're staying, yeah. But yeah, with the ones at home, they actually do take longer because I'll dress the scene, then I'll have to get ready. I can't be wearing my pajamas and have messy hair and stuff like that. Yeah. So there's a bit more kind of effort involved to get it, to look how I want it to look.
So there's an element there of having to sort of visually set the scene, dressing it, and that takes a lot of time as well. So they're definitely really thought out, aren't they?
Yeah, I use things like Instagram and Pinterest and stuff, and then I'll have an idea in my mind of how I want it to look, and I'll spend hours and hours making sure it looks the way I've visualized in my mind, and sometimes it doesn't work. So sometimes I might spend 2 or 3 hours, and then I'll edit it and I'll look and I'll think, actually, I don't think it's worked, and it can be a little bit disheartening sometimes because you've spent so long. Yeah. But it's all learning, so it's a benefit, from that perspective.
And what camera do you shoot with? I mean, I'm sure people would love to know what these incredible pictures are coming from.
Well, this one, I'm actually taking a degree at the moment as well in photography. I thought because we were going to have some time at home, it was a good opportunity for me to do a degree. So this one I actually shot with a Nikon D810.
Right.
Which is very fancy compared to what I was using before and expensive.
What were you using before?
Well, the first camera that I bought was a Canon 1100D,
right.
D1100. And I used that because I travelled. It just came everywhere with me, and I used that up until I started using the Nikon, and then I kind of got used to using Nikon. So I bought myself a D5600, I think.
Oh, I don't know my Nikons very well.
Okay.
I'm a Canon girl.
I used to be. I moved over to the dark side then. It's a lower spec model compared to what I shot, but it's a good camera, and it kind of, does what I need it to do and that sort of thing. I don't really think it's down to the kit. It's kind of more about...
person.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Did you notice any differences changing between, were they both full frame?
The D810 was, the one I'm using now isn't, but I think the type of photography that I shoot, especially for Instagram, it doesn't really...
You don't feel the difference?
No, it doesn't make any difference, really.
And I think that it genuinely does come down to that. I mean, it always fascinates me what people do shoot with, and I'm a massive believer that, you can put any camera in the right pair of hands and they're still going to get the epic shot regardless.
No, exactly. Yeah, I think... whatever camera you're holding as a photographer, that's your best camera.
Right.
For sure, yeah.
Do you ever shoot with your phone?
No, I don't take very good pictures with my phone. I don't know if it's because I'm so used to using the camera, and I'm always really impressed by, there's lots of accounts on Instagram where they're iPhone accounts, and the photos are absolutely beautiful, and it used to baffle me until I kind of started to think in a different way about it not being about the kit, but more about who's behind the camera and, editing as well. So, yeah.
So what's next for you? What's your next project that's on the horizon?
Well, more travel.
Yeah.
I think that's the main thing. We're trying to kind of keep taken as many trips as possible, and I want to finish my degree, so I've only just finished the first year of that.
Where are you studying?
It's in the Northeast, so it's the Northern Centre of Photography.
Right.
And it's very old school, so I'm doing a lot of film and
amazing,
that kind of thing, so it's very different to the Instagram. It's kind of like two lives I'm leading.
Does the film, have you noticed that the film is influencing your work in any way?
I think about, it's more, the stuff that I've learned is more about kind of questioning what I'm doing and why, and making it, thinking about the narrative a little bit more than just a pretty picture.
Yeah.
And which I think is why I started to put myself in the pictures a little bit more, because I think it gives more of a sense of that you could put yourself in the image, because you can see somebody doing those things, drinking that coffee or reading that book and that sort of thing. So I think it's definitely helped with thinking from a narrative point of view with photography, which I think is really important.
I think film definitely slows down. I mean, it's so perfect being the slow traveller as well. Like just making things... it's like you say, we can go and take 200 photos of something, but with film, you just don't have that. So
no, exactly.
You really have to peel back and find those moments that you're looking for.
And I found that I do that now with my own photography. I don't shoot a lot of pictures.
Yeah.
I'm a bit more, I try and get the perfect shot rather than, and I think it works for some people, if you take 300 pictures, there's going to be a good one somewhere.
Yeah, you'll get it somewhere.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But I kind of work the opposite to that. I'm a bit more of a perfectionist, I think, and it's kind of like, this is the shot or not at all sort of thing. So, yeah.
So one last question for you then. If you could shoot absolutely anything in the world, like if your ideal project came up, what would it be?
I absolutely love being in the mountains. So I think I would love to be able to have more kind of landscape work in my Instagram and in the stuff that I do. So you know, snowy mountains, the Himalayas. Maybe I could climb Everest or something like that.
Sounds fun. Well, I mean, I would love to see you shoot that. So I hope that comes true for you. Thank you so much for sharing your knowledge with us today. It literally has been a pleasure watching you work.
Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you for being here. I'll leave you to your evening. But from all of us, thank you, and enjoy the rest of your evening.
Thank you.
So the massive thank you to Carolyn, or should I say the Slow Traveller. What a great photo. And I think some of us, especially me, may now want to travel to Barcelona to see if we can take that same shot. We'd love to know what you think at home, so don't forget to tweet us at Adobe UK using the hashtag #MakeIt. And we can't wait to see your photos, so get sharing to be in with a chance of winning Creative Cloud Photography Plan free for a whole year. So I'm excited to be inviting Julia to us now, also known as Humphrey and Grace. I'm particularly looking forward to this one because I've been looking at her Instagram feed today, and I know she's got something pretty exciting to share with us as well. So hopefully our computer is all set up. There we go. And welcome, Julia. It's absolutely lovely to meet you.
Hello, thank you. Thank you for having me.
How's your day been?
Yeah, really good, apart from the rain.
I know, it's actually really starting to bucket down now, isn't it?
It is, yeah.
So tell us a bit about you. Where did the name Humphrey and Grace come from?
So Humphrey and Grace is a name that I'm quite attached to. I've had it for about 3 years now. It started, I used to have a web shop, and this was the name.
Amazing.
Thank you. This is the name I chose for my web shop. But it didn't sit in line with my Instagram, and I found that over time people were getting confused about who I was, and was it me and was it not me. So I changed it at the beginning of last year to sit more in line with my website, Instagram, both match, everyone's happy.
And what was your old site then? Because obviously...
So now it's a blog, and I have some little bits of resources about photography on there, but originally the web shop started because I was sort of a stay-at-home mum, and it was something that I could do around my daughter.
Yeah. How old is she now?
She's 5 now. But obviously when toddlers are toddling, it's very difficult to have a lot of time to dedicate to sewing and making things, and it sort of evolved at that point into more photography and writing, which is perfect for me. It's something I love anyway. So,
yeah, exactly.
Yes.
And do you, because Fi's around the age that she's obviously going to school now as well.
Yes,
so
she's just finishing her first year.
So have you had a new lease of life and lots of extra time to spend on your passions?
It's like anything, you fill the time that you have.
Yeah.
So I have put a lot more time into what I'm doing. Free time, I don't have really in spades. But there's no such thing, is there? But obviously I'm working on the website all the time, and photography is something that I've really found my feet in, I hope. So yeah, that's...
Yeah. So how did you get into photography? What was the catalyst for you?
So I've always been creative. I've always been interested in photographs, family photographs when I was a child. Absolutely loved looking through albums.
Yeah.
I had my first camera when I was a child, but I didn't really do anything with it until at college I did a couple of film photography, 35mm black and white film photography, and developing them, and dark rooms, and I kind of enjoyed looking at photography in a different way, but then put it down largely until I actually downloaded the Instagram app, and that's kind of what sparked me to want to improve.
Yeah.
When you're seeing photographers all the time who do amazing photographs, you can't help but be inspired to want to do better and to improve what you know already and make the best of what you can do. So, yeah. So
Instagram's been a massive influence on you then.
Yeah, massive.
When did you start your Instagram?
So I downloaded the app about 6 years ago, but I didn't really do anything with it. I thought it was a photo editing app, so I would, upload the odd photo and put a filter on it and go, great, and that was it. It wasn't until my youngest was about 6 months old that I changed it into a public profile and started actually taking part in a photo a day.
Oh, nice.
Yes, which was a great way of kind of meeting a new community. I was still at home with her, and it was, in the nicest possible way, it relieved the boredom a little.
Yeah. And how did you find, so obviously a photo a day, basically taking a single photo, normally with a theme,
with a prompt,
right?
yeah. So there are several that run that I had actually come across one in particular because there was a local Instagrammer who did this photo a day, and I just found her on Twitter, and I thought, oh, that's a really good idea. I'd like to get involved in that too. So
amazing. And did you find the prompts helped you, or did your style develop through that? How did it influence you?
I would say it did. I think having a word or a sentence to work to makes you think a bit outside the box. You know, it might be something like cup of coffee. Well, find a different way to photograph a cup of coffee, or, you know. So yes, it kind of got the creative spark going, so I could begin to explore more creatively with my photography, and you know, starting from absolutely no editing at all, to then looking at, you know, filters and so on, and actually finding my feet with editing as well. It's all come from this signing up for Instagram.
Do you remember any of the prompt words? Do you remember any of them that stood out from that first year?
No, I mean, not especially. They were literally just a throwaway word, which you would turn into something, you know, it would be blue, or it would be happy, or it would, you know, so many words. What I found more engrossing was the community around it. So the people who you would post to a hashtag, and then people would comment, and you would chat with them, and it just opened up a whole world that I hadn't realised existed.
Amazing. So definitely a community vibe going on in there.
Yeah.
So what are your top subjects to shoot? What inspires you?
Everything inspires me, from the tiniest detail to the biggest landscape. I have my favourites. I really love shooting landscapes, florals, buildings. My love of buildings goes back to childhood. I've always loved National Trust properties. Was a big thing when I was little, and then in the past, in one of my previous lives, I've worked as an estate agent, and photographing property was part of that.
Wow.
So actually, although it's an Instagram thing now, it's something I have always done.
Yeah.
Just random buildings or bits of buildings, or
I love buildings. Architecture is one of my National Trust ones as well for me. It's just the interior design on these places. It's just phenomenal, isn't it?
Yeah, and the history, the fact that you can unpick a building through eras and times gone past, and I just find it fascinating. And
the floral side and the nature, that's a huge one for you as well, isn't it?
It is. I mean, I'm very lucky. I live in a beautiful county.
Yeah.
We have landscapes galore of all kinds, from forests to cliffs to beaches to, you know, we have everything. And my flower field, which, you know, we'll be talking about in a minute. I love a landscape.
Perfect. So do you pre-plan your trips when you go, or, I mean, are you one of those people that can walk out the house and find inspiration anywhere? How do your photos come about?
Some and some. There are times when I will specifically plan travel or trips for photography. But it also works the other way round, that I will have seen somewhere photographed on Instagram often, and I'll think, oh, that looks really nice, and it makes me want to travel there. And then, of course, the photography is easy because you know it's beautiful already. But actually, a lot of the time, I'm just photographing as I go. If the weather's good, there's a particular light at home when there's a bit of a sea mist and the sun's in the right place, and my husband's very tolerant. We drop everything, and that's it. I'm off.
There's a beautiful sunset. We're off.
Well, he does. He looks to the point now that my children will say, "Mummy, sun's looking good," and we do.
Amazing.
Yeah, it's a family thing now.
So, do they all have their own cameras, or like phone cameras, and you all go out together? And
not as much as I'd like. If I'm honest, I have my old DSLR camera, which they are allowed to practice on, but they're not as interested as I would like them to be, as often happens, maybe later.
Yeah.
But at the moment, obviously, you have a camera on your phone. Everybody has a camera on their phone, so for them, it's just easy to pick up the phone and take a picture.
Amazing. Yeah, and if you're surrounded by such beautiful sort of landscapes anyway, it's just perfect, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, to have them so interested in even just lights at that age is phenomenal.
Yeah, exactly. I think even if they're not taking the photographs, they're learning certain skills along the way that I'm hoping at some point I can channel them into the actual holding of a camera as well.
That'd be amazing.
Yeah, it would.
Yeah, full-on family outing.
Yeah, I can imagine.
So let's talk about your Instagram, because you have a pretty impressive following, don't you? It's like over 200,000 people on there. How did that start for you? did they all come overnight, or was it things like these projects that we were talking about just now? How's that grown?
It's been a mixture of things. It was very slow to begin with. It was like anybody, you kind of start with no followers and it seems very difficult. And then I was actually put on Instagram's suggested user list of old, which gave me a really big head start.
Yeah.
And then it's come in fits and spurts. There've been nothing in particular. I was once featured on Instagram's page, but that yes, no, I'm not downplaying that, but it didn't bring a lot of followers in the grand scheme of things. It's great for exposure, but in some ways it was not that great. So yeah, it's just hard work and consistency, and I think your followers learn to expect a certain thing, and if you can play to that, then it just grows by itself.
And what tips can you give people looking to, I mean, obviously you've done yours through craft and hard work.
Yeah.
What have you learned along the way that have been key things that have helped you grow and expand?
Consistency is a really big thing. It is hard work and it does take a lot of hours.
Yes.
It's not easy for any of us. It doesn't matter if it looks like it was easy. It's not. Networking with people, whether they're other Instagrammers or brands or hubs or whatever kind of account you want to be networking with. But talk to people. If people are nice enough to leave a comment on your photo, I think reply.
Yeah.
It's hard work, but reply.
Yeah. I can imagine you probably get a lot of comments as well.
It can be. It can be time consuming, but. Manners, it's just basic manners, I think, and people engage with that. If you are a genuine human being and acting like a genuine human being, it goes a long way.
Yeah. As you say, there is such a good community on there. Do you spend a lot of time offline with other Instagrammers? Something that comes up?
Yeah, it does. Some. Again, locally, I don't know many Instagrammers where I live. So it tends to be when I'm in London, I'll catch up with people. Yes, which is great because it's a really nice way to be in the company of people who understand what you do. In my day-to-day life, it's slightly a random thing. I lie in fields of flowers and,
I mean, that sounds like a great day to me.
I mean, it's fine. I really enjoy it, but it's not something at the school gate that makes an awful lot of sense.
No.
So
it's a bit hard to place in a conversation, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. It is. I've had people say before, some of the mums at school who will find your photographs and they'll say, "Oh yes, I found your Instagram account," and I'm always slightly, "Ooh, did you?" I'm not sure how to take that. Okay.
So. When you've taken your photos then, when you're putting them into Lightroom, what are your favourite tools to use in Lightroom? What do you rely on?
I rely an awful lot on the sliders in the colour. I like to play with the saturation and the luminance of colours. I think it brings a photo alive. I shoot my photos in RAW, so they can... Sometimes there's a lot of information in the file, but it can appear quite flat when you put it on the screen.
Yep.
So I like to kind of make that come alive again.
And when did editing become a part of your sort of photographic journey? Were you always editing, or did one day you just decide, actually, I want to do a bit more on these? No,
so I didn't. In the beginning, well, as I say, Instagram I thought was photo editing. And yes, they have some great tools now, but back then it was literally put a filter and a frame on and you're good to go.
And it wasn't even that many, it seems like.
No, there was only about 8 of them or 10, I can't remember.
And you scroll back in your Instagram feed right to the beginning and it's like they've got all these weird borders, haven't they?
I took them out. I deleted them. You won't find them there. But it genuinely... didn't really appreciate what photo editing was for a very long time. So I started with apps. There's a couple of basic apps with basic sliders, which are a really good way to start. But actually, they don't give enough information. So, I've been using Lightroom now for a good 18 months, I think, something like that. And love it.
And how did you learn? Like, did you follow any sort of courses, or you sort of open it and it just made sense?
No, it didn't make sense. It baffled me to begin with completely. I didn't understand it at all. And I'm still learning. I'm not perfect at this, but I found I'm very much a learner through doing. So I will fiddle with something and see what it does. And if I like the effect, we'll use it. And if not, we don't. But there have been the gaps in my knowledge that I have turned to the online resources to try and work out how to do things. They're really helpful.
Yeah, and there's loads of amazing stuff at Adobe.tv as well. That's actually how when I first picked it up, went on there and did a couple of their sort of walkthroughs, and I was like, oh, this makes sense.
Yeah, it does. I found recently the coffee break tips that you do, and they're just so helpful. I'm learning things all the time that I didn't know. So yeah, it's an ever-learning process.
Well, I actually can't wait to see what you're going to show us. So I'm going to hand over to you, and you can give us a demo of what you've done on this image here.
Thank you. Okay, so this is, anyone who follows me on Instagram will know these images. This is one of my wildflower field. For Instagram, my favourite way to post, my favourite format is a 4x5. So we start by cropping. I'm going to just move that detail into the middle. So I'm taking quite a bit out of the edge of the image, but I'm keeping most of the flowers in there, which is what I want to focus on, the colour of the flowers. Because I'm shooting at last light of the day, it tends to be slightly underexposed.
Do you tend to go out sort of just before golden hour, like when?
Yeah, so this is probably around about, it's in the last 2 hours of the day, but golden hour in this particular field, it tends to take all the colour out. You end up with quite an orangey photograph, which can be great, and I do use that. But for these purple flowers, I've gone a little bit earlier to try and capture a little bit more of the colour. So I'm going to start with taking up the exposure a little bit, just so we can see what's going on in the shadows. I actually start editing backwards, if I'm honest. I'm going to start with the colours because I have this thing with green.
Me too. Me too.
It's my thing. Certain greens I can deal with, but that limey green we've got in the bottom here, it's really not my cup of tea. So we're going to just take that down to yellow.
Yep.
I think sometimes what the camera records is not exactly what I'm seeing.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to put it back to, in my mind, how it should look. I'm also going to play with the luminance a bit. So the green areas in here, if I exaggerate that, you can see a little bit more. They're a little bit too bright for me, so I'm actually going to turn this down a little bit and maybe just desaturate a tiny bit as well.
Yeah.
So we're beginning to get to where I feel this field is. It's kind of a yellowy orange colour, and that's what I'm aiming for. We're going to take the yellow down a tiny bit as well.
Those flowers are really starting to pop now, aren't they?
Exactly. So this is the idea, is to bring out the colour of the flowers. What actually happens is that what's behind the flowers in this photograph is actually in the sunlight. So I'm just going to bring up the luminance of the yellows and the oranges, because that will kind of bring the field to life a little bit more. And I think that's okay. We're good. We're not going to play too much more with the colours here. I just want it to be that kind of warm summer glow.
Yeah.
Because of the colour of the flowers, they're kind of a bluey purple, so we're going to play, again, we'll up the saturation a tiny bit on these, just so they pop.
Yep.
Okay, so I would probably tinker about with that. I would come back to that a little bit later, but we're going to go right back to the top and just fiddle about with the highlights and the whites a little bit, because I think, again, if we take away a little bit of the contrast, again, it's all about the purple flowers.
Yep.
So we're just going to pull these up a little bit. And then to bring out the detail, I like to just add a little bit of clarity. Most of my photos, I'll turn up this clarity a tiny bit.
Yeah, they're really popping now, aren't they?
Yeah, exactly. So I'm not overly happy with the colour of them. They're a tiny bit, the flowers in the flesh are actually a really bluey purple.
Yep.
So I'm just going to maybe turn the purple down a little bit, see if we can get something more realistic. Yeah, that's better.
So there's a lot of like fine tuning.
So yeah, I mean, I may not use thousands of steps, but there's a lot of tinkering and back and forth. And, you know, if I'm planning on lining something like this up in my Instagram gallery, I'll actually try and sit it next to other photos, because there's a certain colour palette that is in my Instagram gallery, and I need it to sit within that. So to be honest, this is probably still a tiny bit yellow. I would tinker with it some more. Maybe just turning the temperature down might fix that a tiny bit. Obviously, you can compensate for yellows with blues. So there we go. That's immediately, that looks a little bit better to me.
Your feed is really well curated, isn't it? There's very strong colour themes within your...
There are. I mean, I use a lot of colours, especially I try and keep it quite seasonal, but at the moment, colour is a big thing. It's summer, the flowers are out and the fields are full, and so yes, but they have to sit comfortably next to each other.
Yeah.
So I find it very difficult to put in a colour that jars. I've got photos on my camera roll which I'd love to put in at the moment. I've got some poppy fields, incredible poppy fields, but I can't make the green and red sit happily.
Yeah.
So they'll just sit on the camera roll a little bit longer.
Yep.
So yeah, I mean, that's pretty much, I wouldn't do an awful lot more than that, as I say, other than tinker. I don't tend to use much of this, the curves and the, you know, maybe if anything I would just turn up the highlights and the darks a tiny bit, but.
Yeah. So when you're shooting, you're pretty much shooting on for your exposure. Is that something you spend a lot of time on when you're, I mean, obviously we've talked about how specific you are with time of day and lighting.
Yes.
Is that something that's really important to you when you are in the moment of taking the shot?
Yeah, I do miss it sometimes because obviously depending on whether you're looking towards the sun or away,
Yeah.
it can change enormously how the photograph comes out.
Yeah.
So there's in a particular direction when the sun's not in the frame, yes, I try and expose it correctly, but if you're shooting towards the sun, the contrast is huge and you end up with a big dark area, and so the editing can be a lot more intense on that, just to bring it back to something that you can see the details in.
And talk me through what you were shooting this with. What was your sort of go-to camera?
So I have a Canon 7D.
Mm-hmm.
Go-to lens is a 17 to 55 millimeter because it cuts quite a lot. I can get a pretty good, well, you can see a pretty good depth of field.
Really good.
Considering, yeah, it's a lens that I love, and it tends to be the one that's on the camera all the time.
Yeah.
I tinker more with the exposure and, you know, f-stops, I suppose, than I do with anything else. But yeah, I'm very much a try and see photographer. So there may be quite a lot of photographs that never make it anywhere other than my camera roll because they're not quite right. But I find that's the way that I learn best. So.
And when you were, so with this, like, how many photos would there have been of this particular?
So on this night in this field, I took around about 80.
Okay.
Of those, there are about 15 to 20 that I would use.
Nice.
Which I'm really happy with, and you know, most people will know I keep putting them into my gallery and have done ever since I took them because they're my favourites. But there's 60 to throw away. That's still quite a lot. I'm more of a
1 in 4 though.
It's not too bad, is it? No. And I think digital cameras make this so easy because you can overshoot.
Yeah.
Especially the problem with wildflowers is they move a lot. So
yeah.
In my defence, there's a lot of blur.
At that sort of close range as well, then it would just pick up.
Yeah.
Really, it would just be really obvious, wouldn't it?
Yeah, it is, definitely.
And with the 20 or so, would you batch edit them, or do you literally go through each one and one by one edit?
Yeah, so again, as I say, with the variations in light, so there'll be the ones that are exposed like this, I'll batch edit them. Mm-hmm. And then the ones that are slightly underexposed, I'll play with that and then I'll batch edit them. So yes, a mixture.
And what are there any stages that you go through between now and them actually going onto Instagram? Do things change much?
They don't take, not a huge amount, no. I mean, I will sort of tinker about, as I say, with the sharpening, luminance, we'll play with that, and the saturation, but it's more with coordinating the colour. So if I get that right in Lightroom, I really don't do anything else. They come straight from Lightroom into Instagram, yeah. And
how much do you shoot? So obviously, you know, we've got stuff that's on your feed today. How much other stuff have you got lined up that's sort of in the wings waiting to go up?
It varies. Sometimes nothing, sometimes 5, 10 photographs. At the moment, I've got 2 or 3, which I think I might post next, but you know, they might not make it to my feed either. Yeah. It depends. I'm driven quite a lot by mood and what's going on, and you know, how I feel about the day in general, and I choose as I go.
Amazing.
Yeah.
So what's next for you? What projects have you got coming up?
I've got a couple of really interesting projects working with some travel brands at the moment that I'm quite looking forward to, and I'm also at the moment releasing free downloadable resources, just really basic photography skills.
Amazing.
I learnt from nothing. If I can help someone else learn some basic skills. That's kind of what I'm out to do.
That's brilliant. Where can people find those?
So online, my website is humphreyandgrace.co.uk, and there's a tab at the top that says Learn, and at the moment there's 3 downloads that you can just access for free.
Amazing.
Thank you.
So if you could do anything, like the best job in the world landed in your inbox tomorrow, what would it be?
Oh, gosh. Big question. Travel. It would always be travel.
Yeah.
I would
What's in your
love
bucket list?
to go. Iceland.
Yes.
Italy, but areas of Italy that you wouldn't necessarily see on Instagram. Rural Italy. I'd love to go there. And just actually, there are parts of the UK that I haven't been to. I was just chatting with Ali. I would love to go to the Isle of Skye and areas of Scotland. I'd really like to go back to, actually.
Yeah, there's some amazing stuff up there. And
definitely.
I follow a lot of Scottish photographers, and just seeing what is up there, especially sort of Highlands Way, I can't wait. I've got a little bit of a trip planned next year.
Have you?
So yeah,
exciting.
Cannot wait. And yeah, Iceland is another one that I managed to do this year. I thoroughly recommend it. So.
I'll have to pick your brain later.
You can. Well, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you today, seeing your work and finding out more about you. Thank you for being here.
Thank you very much for having me.
And I hope you enjoy the rest of your evening.
Thank you.
Right. So we've got some fantastic editing tips there. Don't forget to tweet us at Adobe UK with your thoughts on this evening's speakers and what you're learning so far. And don't forget, you also have a chance to win Creative Cloud Photography Plan free for a year by tweeting us your photos edited using the tips you've learned in tonight's show. Tag us at Adobe UK and include the hashtag #MakeIt to make sure we see them. So now on to our last speaker for the evening, Ryan Howard. I'm really excited to bring him on today and his wonderful landscape work, specifically in London, and also his portrait work as well. So welcome, Ryan. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
How are you?
I'm all right. How are you?
Yeah, good. It's absolutely a pleasure to have you here today. You're a photographer and a videographer. Talk me through that. How does your work, how do the two combine?
Well, I started videography when I was about 16. I did it at college, media. And then for Instagram, I just started taking photos, got a little bit addicted to the likes and the comments.
Yeah.
And it's sort of now 50-50 with what I do.
So video is 50% of the work that you're...
Yeah, 50% video, 50% photography.
Amazing.
Yeah.
So I was having a look through your feed earlier. I love your London photos. There's some pretty awesome urban landscapes going on in there. Talk me through your London work, because it's places that we would, and I know I certainly have walked past so many times in the past, but you seem to capture them in a way that they're just like you've never seen before. What inspires you to go out and take the photos of those specific areas?
Well, a perfect day for me is just going out and strolling around, like without a checklist to do this sort of shot, that sort of shot, just me, camera, headphones, and just wander the streets. Yeah. Because you could come back with one shot that could be amazing, it might be awful, or you could come back with 80 that are decent, uploadable. Yeah. And then you go out at different days, so you could go out one Saturday, it might be pouring with rain, you could go out the Sunday, it's bright sunshine, 2 photos never look the same.
Yeah, I always think that was at London as well, especially when it's like rainy and like just really grey.
Yeah, but then I like that.
Yeah, same.
Yeah.
And actually, it was one of the things that you said to me earlier today when we were having a chat about, you know, especially when you get those really cool puddles and the reflections of some of the architecture. Yeah, it looks really cool. Yeah. Have you got any places that you specifically like to go and shoot?
I like the underground. Purely symmetry is my main thing I like, and you can go to any station and they're all so beautiful. Yeah. Escalators as well. And that's what you mean by you take something ordinary, like that you walk past so many times. Yeah. And in my eyes, it's still, an escalator can still look so good.
Yeah. Some of the lines on them are pretty special, aren't they?
I do like my lines.
Do you spend a lot of time waiting for them to come free?
Yeah. Little tip is if the train comes, wait for everyone to get off. They'll go up the escalator and then you've got about 20 seconds. Yeah. Station is empty. Or what I've done a few times is do the night tube. You wake up, well, you don't wake up, you go out about 7 p.m, shoot until 6, 7 a.m. It's tiring, but
but worth it for the shot.
Needs to be done, yeah.
That's some real dedication there, isn't it?
Yeah, but you need it, I feel, yeah.
And you also do some portrait work as well. So Talk me through the portrait side of things, because that's very, very different from...
Yes, so I got into that purely because I felt like I hadn't completed London, but I'd shot it so often. I'd been to Big Ben countless of times. It was just getting boring. So I thought, let's try something new. I hadn't done any portraits before, so I found a friend who was willing to help me. Started shooting her. People liked it. That helps.
Yeah.
And then, and then it just took off a bit, and now I prefer doing that to architecture.
What is it you prefer about the portraiture in reference to landscapes? What
Just
attracts
the fact
you?
that you're then spending 2 hours, 5 hours, a whole day talking to someone. It's not just you and your headphones.
Yeah.
You can't talk to a building, engage
No.
with it. You might get odd looks, but
Yeah.
it's been done before.
Yeah.
Might you? But yeah, just so many. And editing-wise, I feel like I can edit them differently because people expect my moody London shots. Whereas portraits, I'm happy to have colour and make them pop out a bit more.
Breaking the mould a little bit.
Yep.
Yeah. So, I hope you don't mind me saying, but you've achieved quite a lot in a relatively short career. Talk me through some of the things that you've been up to and how these opportunities sort of came to you.
Yeah, I've been fortunate because they've come to me. I haven't really pushed myself out there. I've networked a bit, but I've never forced myself to be in someone's face, being like, hire me for this, hire me for that.
Yeah.
Which I personally like. So recently, I just got back from Australia, just doing 2 weeks there, filming, photographing.
What were you shooting?
Beaches, crocodiles,
Amazing.
sunsets, rainforests.
How close do you get to those crocodiles?
We went to a zoo for one day, which is quite fun, so very close. And then I found that one sunrise I was shooting, and I went in up to my waist with my camera.
Right.
And as I came out, the PR guy I was traveling with was like, I didn't tell you before you went in, but you shouldn't have done that because this is a crocodile area.
Ah.
So that was fun. Didn't tell my mum, but
Yeah, probably don't. Yeah.
she's there now.
Hi, Mum.
Yeah.
So pretty close then.
Yeah,
Yeah.
hopefully not, but apparently they were there.
You were fine. You're fine. Everything intact.
Yeah,
You're good.
Still got legs. Yeah.
And what tips can you give people on getting your portfolio seen?
The number one tip that I share to those that want the branding work and all of that is create a look that people recognise as your own.
Yeah.
So I've seen, like, my favourite photographer, he's called Jason Peterson. He's in Chicago. And he's got a very high contrast black and white. So whenever I see his image, I just know it's his.
Yeah.
Even though it's black and white, you still know.
Yeah.
So I try to do that with mine, just adding a bit of colour and making them my own. And I've seen with other photographers, like there's a portrait photographer called Mark Hayden.
Yeah.
And his are all grainy, filmy. And whenever you see his, even if it hasn't got his name, you just know it's his.
Yeah.
And brands like having that because then they
They know exactly
they
what
feel
they're
it's a
getting.
collaboration rather than they're paying a photographer to just shoot their shoes, their drink,
Yeah.
and all of that.
Yeah. So for those people out there who maybe haven't seen your work before, what's your signature style? What do you work towards with your editing?
Dark, moody days like today.
I like it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Today's probably actually perfect weather for you to be
shouldn't
shooting.
Yeah. But yeah, like dark grey skies, clouds. I don't like sun. I don't like sunsets. I don't like sunrises.
Moody,
don't like
grey,
colour.
dark. Yeah. So obviously if you like going out and shooting that, how do you protect your kit from, pretty much the elements?
Yeah, I just
Shoot and hope for
one
the
day
best.
it will probably come back and bite me. But like if it's chucking down, I wouldn't go out. But if it's
Yeah.
spitting, then
Yeah.
it's usually okay. Touch wood.
Yeah. So you've got some exciting projects ahead of you as well, haven't you?
Yeah.
What have you got coming up?
Hopefully going abroad a few times this year. And then video-wise, I'm working with a few different shows that are touring the UK,
Yeah.
filming them. And then photo-wise, just continuously to push myself.
Yeah. How do you find your video and your photography sit in terms of, do they have the same style? And does that translate easily across to both?
Yeah, recently, like my Australia video, I gave it a colour grade that people commented was saying it's got that very like Ryan X Howard look, which is what I wanted. Because I wanted to try and make Australia, even though it was bright sunshine,
Yeah.
still have my feel.
Because Australia, especially when you see pictures or anything photographed out there, there is an aesthetic that it kind of lends itself to.
Yeah.
How hard did you have to fight against the
right.
natural to what you wanted to portray it as?
Yeah, well, I took all the photos of sunsets and all of that, but the stuff that I upload, I held back a bit. So it was all like the rainforests, like the dark greens, the stuff that suits me.
And do you have do you have your personal photos that kind of don't necessarily make it up to the website?
Well, on my website, I upload a bit more colourful. But I've got another Instagram that's just me, my dog, and outtakes.
Amazing. What's your dog called?
Muttley.
Nice.
Yeah, like the wacky races.
So there is very much a split between, it's a very heavily curated brand, and then
which I try. Well, I don't want there to be, but I feel there sort of has to be if I want to be known as the photographer that does that.
Yeah. So you mentioned the Ryan X Howard. What's the X stand for?
Basically, there's a baseball player from Philadelphia called Ryan Howard.
There is.
Yeah.
Only because I looked you up on Instagram, knowing you were going to be here, and his one came up.
Yeah,
I was like, it's definitely not the photographer.
No.
Yeah.
It'd be cool if it was.
Yeah.
But he had Ryan Howard, and my name was originally Ryan Howard 0, but I didn't like the number being there.
Yeah.
Because it looks like I'm just copying. So I thought, and my middle name is Alec, and I didn't want Ryan A. Howard, because then it could be my name is Ryana, or if that exists. But
Rihanna. Yeah.
So I thought, what's a cool way to split the two? I didn't want a dot or an underscore.
Yeah.
And just thought the X.
So it actually grew out of through having a Instagram name, and then it's obviously translated through to your website name as well, isn't it?
Yeah, because I wanted to keep it all one thing, so I'm changing my email to that and trying not create that as a brand, but so I'm more Ryan X Howard, and people know me as that. And
how has that affected you in terms of pushing your brand? How important has Instagram been to building that following?
Not too much, because I still I was working doing video and photography before I found out about Instagram, so it's sort of just an added bonus. So when a job comes in through Instagram, it's great, because I haven't tried to get that work. Yeah.
Amazing. So your portfolio, we've obviously said, spans across urban and portrait shots. Which do you find easier to edit?
It depends. If it's a cloudy day, I just do my preset, and then that's it. Portraits, I find neons very difficult.
Yes.
Because there's colours coming everywhere, like the model's face gets blown out. But city stuff is definitely easier, I reckon.
Yeah. And you talk about your presets. So have you created your own presets?
Yeah, quite a few. Yeah.
And what's your favourite tool to use in Lightroom?
Probably tone curve, which I assume is what everyone says. But
do you know, everyone has different ones. Like tonight we've had colour being one of the first ones.
Yeah, I do like that one.
Yeah, so I actually can't wait to see what you're about to show us with your editing. So I'm going to hand over to you, and we can see how you edit your photos.
Yeah. So the first thing I usually do when I import the photo is enable profile corrections. And because I shoot on a Sony but use a Canon lens, I need to enter it manually, because Lightroom doesn't like my adapter.
Right.
For that, you can see like the little bubble goes.
Yeah.
And then I straighten, just so that before editing I can see how it will turn out. And then usually I like to shoot as I edit.
Yeah.
In a way that I don't overexpose, I don't underexpose. I want to get it as perfect as possible.
So how much time would you spend, like this shot, for example, how long would you have spent setting it up, making sure it was all perfect before you took the photo?
Not long at all.
Yeah.
No, because on a day like that, my settings would have remained similar.
Yeah.
So it's just changing the shutter speed for the bus and the movement.
And was this shot on tripod?
No, handheld.
Yeah.
I don't like carrying a tripod, because if I'm out for a whole day, it gets a bit heavy.
Yeah. So what sort of settings? Like obviously, you're saying because of the bus going past.
Yeah, that was. I think I get my settings up. Yeah, so that was 1/5 of a second at f8.
So you're standing pretty still then.
Yeah, with Sony, it's got in-body stabilization, which helps massively.
Yeah.
But I do have quite steady hands, which I find also helps.
Awesome.
Yeah. So after I've done fixing that, I take my highlights down, so then you can see the clouds start to appear.
Bringing in those moody skies.
Yeah, shadows up to get the details around the bus. And then colour-wise, I always take the vibrance right down, but then you can see that takes the contrast down as well. So then that makes it, so already you can start to see that's more my vibe. And then,
it's definitely feeling more you, isn't it?
Yeah. And then the tone curve, I do 2 dots. And I don't know if this is right, but it's what my A-level photography teacher said, just do the S. So since then, I've always been doing that.
Yep.
And then drag up that bottom left corner. That gives it that faded look.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's a bit of blue, which I hate blues.
Interesting.
Yeah, I'm a Tottenham fan as well, so I shouldn't be saying that. Yeah.
It's funny, isn't it, how different photographers have different colours they don't like. Like obviously,
Yeah.
Just now we were talking about the fact that I'm not a particular fan of the colour green, but
Yeah.
I find it
Yeah.
so interesting that different photographers are drawn to or drawn away from certain colours.
Yeah. I've never like, in portraits, my blues come out a bit more. City stuff. It's the bright skies, they're not my style.
Yeah.
So then you can see it's a bit dark here, so I'll put the exposure a little bit up. And then my yellows will come down because I'm not a fan of how St. Paul's is looking. So that gives it more of the grey.
Mm-hmm.
And then what I usually do for a shot like this, I'll use the grad filter and just drag down, which brings out the moody skies a lot more.
Yep.
Yeah, it's one of my favourites. I should have said that actually instead of tone curve. It's my hidden gem.
Yeah, that's making such a difference to that
Yeah,
sky,
because
isn't
you
it?
can see, like the lower down, the more brushwork you need to do around. But even just the top there. So yeah, if I didn't have a time limit, I'd brush around and get it perfect.
Yeah. So just to go through what the brush tool is, so that's another tool that we have within, in fact, most of the tools at the top have a brush tool in there. So you've put in your grad filter,
Yep.
but you can actually brush out over certain elements, like, for example,
Oh, not that one.
St. Paul's.
Yeah, so just erase. Yeah, so you can see the building comes back.
Yep. And there's a really great feature to mention in there as well. There's a little tick box called auto erase, and it'll actually find the edges of things. So if you're trying to edit in a hurry, oh, it's so cool.
Where's that?
It's literally just at the bottom of that.
Auto mask.
Yeah, and then it will it won't go over the edges for you. So it's amazing for speeding up.
Genius.
It's relatively new, actually, but it's one of the ones that I found is super handy, especially for things like if you're bringing in skies and just adding that little bit in.
No, the amount of time I zoom in to try and just go around
Yeah.
the building. Life change.
There you go.
Yeah.
Learn something new every day.
Yeah. So that's sort of, I'll bring the reds out a bit more. That's sort of how the image looks in Lightroom.
Yeah.
But then this, I don't know what that is, but I couldn't work around it. It was just on the pavement. So I'll then go into Photoshop. The people don't bother me too much because it still shows the movement.
Yeah.
It's just the blocking of the pavement is a bit in the way.
Let's wait for that one to come through. So how much do you rely on Photoshop?
Not often.
Just when you've
Just when I need to remove something, because I don't like adding like fake stars or skies, because I like showing real.
And what about your portrait stuff? Do you find you rely on Photoshop a little bit more, a little bit less?
Yeah, but only with, like, say if the model's got a spot on their cheek, I would never take their waist in or something like that.
Yeah.
That's not right. So yeah, so there's the image. So then I'd use the patch tool, and again, if I was doing it without time limit, I do little bits at a time. Oh, a bit wonky. So it just copies the pavement over.
Yep. This fills in that gap.
Yeah.
Obviously, like you say, if it was one of those things, if you had a bit more time.
Yeah, like all these dots here.
Yeah. And how long would something like that normally take you to?
Depends on the shot. Like this one, probably only about 10 minutes.
Yeah.
But I usually edit with a mouse as well, which I prefer than my laptop. But you can already see just it cleans up the pavement. And it adds the focus now more on the bus and St. Paul's rather than a random electrical box.
Yeah.
Taking up London.
So once you've done the editing here, obviously then take it back in, I'm guessing, to Lightroom?
Yeah. So I'd take it back in. And it should pop up. Yep. And then that's just final tweaks. So then I'll do my sharpness, which usually goes to about 80-ish. And the masking. So I'll see what I want sharp, which would probably just be the building. And then noise reduction.
So the masking, that's a really awesome hidden feature.
Yeah,
just
again,
talk
I
people
found
through
out
how you do that one.
So if you hold the Alt key and click on the masking slider, it shows, like the white shows you what you're sharpening. So if you go to 100, it's only very fine. Then if you're on 0, you're sharpening the whole image. So I usually do it just for the buildings.
Yeah.
So, yeah, so that's on 40-ish.
And it's great. It's a really great tool for just working out what you actually want to be doing, rather
especially
than everything.
portraits as well, because if you want the eyes to pop.
Yeah, but not pick out all the details in the skin.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's one of my favourite ones, actually.
Yeah. So then noise reduction, I always seem to just put it on about 20. Not sure why. I think it just might smoothen it. But yeah, and that's about it for Lightroom.
So when you were editing your photos, you've got, obviously, you say you might get sort of 20, 80, however many you get from the day.
Yeah.
Do you batch edit quite a bit, or
all
do
the time?
Yeah.
I hate sitting on photos. If I come back from a day of shooting, I'll edit that night, or I'll edit that day, and I won't want to just edit the one photo that I want to upload. I'll try and edit all of them.
Yeah.
Put them on my phone, and then I know, like, okay, I've got 40 photos to upload.
And you talked about you having your own presets as well. Yeah. Are they ones that you've developed from scratch?
Yeah, so like this, like that sort of looks like my city preset, and then I've got one from for each season and for each portrait.
Oh, so even for each season?
Yeah. So like a sunny day, I'll have one that keeps the blues.
Nice.
And then I've got my moody day one, and then portrait-wise, I've got a neon one, a film one, an outdoor one. Yeah.
Yeah. And do you find that you tend to, obviously today we're going through what you would do on a photo, but do you find that the presets pretty much do, now that you've set them up, do the majority of the work for you?
Yes, the only thing I haven't added in my presets is the grad filter, just because you never know where the building would start, how the sky looks.
Yeah.
So it usually is just a tone curve and the basic tools, and then I'll then put, say I'm shooting like London on a moody day, I'll add that to all of them.
Yeah.
Then I'll go through and tweak and add each filter and all that.
So how do the photos, obviously we've got to this stage, do they change much between now and actually ending up on Instagram or your website?
No, that's sort of about it. I might put a bit more fade using the Instagram app or highlights, because sometimes my phone makes it look a bit darker. But I try and make it as perfect there, just so I don't have to worry about it.
And how does your, I mean, obviously we don't have a portrait one to look at today, but what are the main differences between your portrait editing and your landscape editing?
To not over-edit.
Yeah.
Like some of my London shot, like that to me looks a little bit fake. But portraits, you want them to look clean and just natural, because you don't want the girl or the guy to just, her skin to come out, her hair to look crazy, all of that. If you just keep it a nice colours, nice fade. Like simpler the better.
Simpler the better.
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah.
So what else have you got coming up then? What sort of projects have we got that we can get excited about seeing?
As I said, the show, like the video stuff, that's sort of taking over. And then travelling wise, I'm going to Manchester in a couple of weeks to do some shots there.
Do you find that your photography versus your video is seasonal and you sort of switch between, or do you end up shooting both?
Both.
Pretty much.
Yeah. Like one day it could be video, Tuesday could be photo, Wednesday video.
Do you ever do both on the same shoot?
It's difficult because it's changing settings, and I don't think whoever hires me realises how difficult it actually is to do both.
Yeah, because they're looking at things completely differently.
Yeah, and then they also want you to capture both things at the same time. So say it was a wedding, but I don't do weddings, and they want the first kiss. You obviously can't do that video and photo. Yeah. So then you ask them which one would you want to prioritise, and they're like, can't you just get both?
It's only one of
my
me.
iPhone, my camera, GoPro.
And how does your video, does that have an effect on how you shoot? And do you find that, so for example, video is very narrative driven. Do you find that over the years that is having an effect on your photography? No, I see them very different. Because, sort of not new to photography, but because my photography started for Instagram, it's sort of all I know. Like, I didn't really study photography, which one of my friends is going to pick at me for saying that. But like he looks at photography books and fully goes in and studies. But I sort of like learning from scratch and doing it myself, and I think that's what helped me not learn the tools, but learn to create my own look. Yeah. So I haven't taken inspiration. Learn through doing. Yeah. And doing exactly how I want to do it.
rather than looking at another artist being like, that's cool, I'll look at that and make that my own.
So where does your inspiration naturally come from?
All the moody stuff came from films I used to watch. So stuff like Tim Burton, Martin Scorsese.
Nice.
Like they were the films I studied at college.
Yeah.
And then...
And I guess those are very limited colour palettes as well.
Yeah, like Tim Burton, it's all black, grey.
Yeah, a bit blue.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then the symmetry, I think, is Wes Anderson. It's all to do with movies with me. But then portraits is nothing really.
Yeah. So that's your new, I guess that's the new thing that you're exploring as well.
Which I'm enjoying a lot more.
And is that taking over a bit more?
Yeah, purely because I've done these shoots with London and had 80 shots from that day, 40 shots. I've just got like 800 photos on my phone ready to upload. Whereas portraits, I'm the one pushing out, trying to shoot more.
And with your, you're saying about you've got photos waiting to go up.
Yeah.
How does that process work for you? Like, do you literally have them on your phone? You go, do you know what, I feel like this one today, or do you schedule them in advance? Like, how does?
Yeah, so I try and plan to make my feed look nice. So I never have two symmetrical shots next to each other, two portraits.
Yeah. Because your feed's very curated as well. I think it's been a general theme for everyone here tonight.
Yeah. Well, there are apps now that do that plan it, which I didn't know. I was doing it the long way of uploading, deleting, uploading.
Yeah.
But,
working out how it works.
Yeah. But I like it looking neat because that definitely helps with like going back to the branding stuff. Brands like looking at a clean feed.
Yeah.
So.
I guess that would have a massive impact on work coming up for you as well, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
So if you could have the perfect job land in your inbox tomorrow and it could be literally the best thing to ever happen to you, who would it be and what would you be doing?
I don't know. Like the Australia trip, that was
pretty much that.
Yeah, when the email came in, I forwarded it to my dad, being like, just read through this. Is it legit?
Is it legit?
Yeah. No, and even he was like, is it a scam? Because it sounded too good to be true. So I'd love more trips like that to like New York, Tokyo, Toronto.
Yeah. And also, I guess if you've shot a lot of London, it would be great to actually be going out and doing different and exploring.
Yeah, because I've travelled quite a bit, but...
Where have you been?
I've done quite a lot of the States, quite a lot of Europe. But with America, I wasn't that into photography.
Yeah.
So I only had a basic camera. So I'd love to go back.
What did you start with?
My dad's old Sony NEX5. Then I went to a Canon 6D in 2015. And then I just bought a Sony now.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah. You enjoying the new camera?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's great.
Which one do you have?
A7R2.
Yeah. I hear that's amazing. Do you shoot video with that one as well?
Yeah.
Yeah, I hear that's amazing.
Which, when they ask for photo and video, is just a flick of the switch.
Yeah.
But
amazing.
Still a bit long.
Well, thank you so much for sharing your photos and your knowledge with us. It's been an absolute pleasure talking to you.
Thank you.
So thanks for being here and enjoy the rest of your evening.
You too.
Thank you. So some inspirational stuff there and lots of tips that we can take away from today's demos. So I can't believe it, but that's it for tonight. Thank you to all of our speakers this evening and to you for joining us at home. I hope you enjoyed all of the editing tips that have been shared by our guest speakers. Don't forget to let us know your thoughts on tonight's event. We'd love to know who or what you'd like to see next time as well. You've got until next Tuesday, the 18th of July, to create your images using some of the things you've learned tonight and share them with us on Twitter using the hashtag #MakeIt and tagging @Adobe UK. You'll be in with a chance of winning a 12-month membership to Creative Cloud Photography Plan, which means Photoshop and Lightroom completely free for a whole year. What's not to love? So that's all from us at Adobe. Thank you and good night.